Welcome to today's webinar in the Knowledge Mile series, part of the Lord Mayor's lectures on behalf of Professor Michael Mainelli, whose theme for his mayoral year is Connect to Prosper. The topic for today is why the UK-India relationship matters, opportunities for the financial centre of the world. In this free online lecture series, we address the connections in and around the square mile, what Michael likes to call the world's coffee house, and how these might help us to tackle future global challenges. I'm Professor Tim Connell, Chairman of the Gresham Society and a Fellow of Gresham College here in the City of London, and I also sit on the Court of the Stationers' Company. I'll be convening this session and moderating the questions and answers after today's lecture. Now we have a plan for today, a brief introduction from myself, then the keynote presentation from Dinesh, and then we have plenty of time for questions. We're delighted to have Dinesh with us today. He has a CV which is so extensive that it almost defies description. He is a businessman, parliamentarian and philanthropist. So Dinesh, perhaps you would like to tell us a bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. It's really kind of you to give your time. I'm going to focus on India today and my connection with India in my CV. So I'm a first-generation immigrant from India. I'm here by choice, not because of Idi Amin or persecution somewhere or the other. I think I'm the first Asian to start a company in the UK and take it onto the FTSE 250. This was Deben Travel, Flight Bookers, and ending up with ebookers.com. As far as ebookers are concerned, because we were first with the internet in travel, our sales went from $0 to $1 billion. Our employees went from 0 to 2,000, and we established ourselves in 11 countries in the EU. We also established a BPO in India, employing 1,100 people, and this was all done in 5 years. I wrote a book on this experience called Book It, which I'm unashamedly promoting here. As I had a 10-year non-compete when I sold, I spent 10 years in the NGO charity sector, 5 years in politics, culminating in becoming an MEP in Brussels. I was actually head of the Parliament's India desk in Brussels. Brexit stopped my parliamentary career in February 2020, so I decided to go into green energy, solar energy, and hydrogen storage. I'm now building the second largest solar PV farm in Romania. It will provide energy to a town of 140,000 people all year round. My focus now also is the UK-India partnership and how both sides can benefit. I'm sorry for the long introduction, but there we are. Due to time constraints, I'm only going to limit myself to comments, limit my comments to trade, as it's one of the low-hanging fruits that we have between the UK and India. Just as a preface, India has just done a trade deal with EFTA. By EFTA, I mean Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. These are 4 countries with a total population of 15 million people. It's a 15-year trade deal and a simple deal. EFTA is allowing Indian professionals to come and work in 120 out of 156 service sectors in their countries. We know that most of Europe has staff shortages in these fields. EFTA finished goods will be sold to the 1.45 billion Indian market with no or very little customs duty. Plus, and this is the only other point, there's a sweetener. EFTA will invest 100 billion euros into India to build up Indian manufacturing. So let us now transpose this to a possible UK-India trade deal. Despite the high tariffs on both sides, in 2023, the UK exported £15 billion worth of goods and to India, and India exported £23 billion worth of goods to the UK. Trade deals negotiate away tariffs, as you know. Thus, within 3 years, exports from both sides will double in value. Thus, the UK will go to 30 billion and Indian exports will go to 46 billion. The effect on jobs is amazing. I've studied a lot of trade deals when I was head of the India desk in Europe. And all those, the average job creation in the UK for £50,000 worth of exports will be one job. So for 15 billion extra pounds worth of exports, it will be 300,000 jobs. And these are 300,000 new jobs in the UK. In India, it will be far greater. It'll be 1 million jobs within 3 years, created just by signing a piece of paper and reducing customs duties. Now, we all know that the Indian population is very, very young, and there are 7 million people coming into the workforce in India. Here we have an opportunity for India to get 1 million jobs within 3 years. And it's a great opportunity for the UK to get 300,000 extra jobs. How cool is that? The UK could invest in defense manufacturing in India, as both are members of the Quad. Rolls-Royce, for example, could build SMRs, small modular nuclear reactors, in India. India will need a few dozen of these. These nuclear reactors are between 100 and 300 megawatts. Solar and wind energy, as you know, does not give a base load because it's intermittent. So you need a base load. And nuclear would be perfect because of zero carbon emissions. Opening up the UK for most service jobs, like EFTA has done, education, legal, insurance, audit, to Indian professionals, would make British companies more profitable. Of course, build manufacturing in India as a bulwark against China is government policy. But I want to make 3 points as words of warning to what's happening regarding the trade deal. There have been 14 rounds of negotiations between the UK and India to do a trade deal. And this is in the last couple of years. I feel over-negotiation on both sides to try and get the perfect deal should not be the objective. This normally kills most deals. In my view, there should be evolving negotiations every 5 years or new things added every year. It is like changing the wheels of a moving car. The second point that I want to make is that time is of the essence. The EU could do a deal with India that could leave the UK in the cold, and negotiations with India become much harder. And the third point, which might be more contentious, is that civil servants on both sides normally do not have a business negotiating background. it is an art to negotiate. They do not focus on money or jobs and the number of people who will benefit in their countries. They just don't focus on that as much. They have nothing to lose if a deal does not happen. They are just not aligned enough. They just don't have skin in the game. In my view, there must be a joint business cum civil service team for trade negotiations on both sides with equal weighting. Obviously, the minister decides who is right and who is wrong if there's a conflict, but I'm sure there won't be many. The business side should not be represented by any exporting or importing company to that particular country. So, in conclusion, it is all a question of jobs on both sides. That is why the UK-India relationship matters. I'm sorry it's been short, my talk, but I'd really be happy to answer questions because people will have all kinds of questions from what I've just said. Thank you.
Right, well, thank you very much indeed, Dinesh. Some very interesting points coming up there, and the potential for both sides is clearly absolutely fantastic. Questions coming in already. The first one from Colin Coulson Thomas is querying the membership of Quad. He says that the members, Australia, India, Japan, and the US, but the UK currently is not a member of Quad. Is that correct?
It might be. I thought they were, but they might be an associate member. I'm not sure. But they're certainly aligned with the countries that are members of Quad.
Right. Yes. Yes. And obviously there would be benefits there. Is there? I believe there's a naval force. One of our aircraft carriers going to India later this year. So perhaps that
Yes.
might be part of a trend. Yes, I thought there was. I've seen something in the press about it.
But I do stand corrected. I do stand corrected.
Indeed. Ronald Lehman is asking us, will the general election derail the progress on the UK-India trade deal negotiations? 300,000 new jobs in the next 3 years, as you rightly say, is just a boost for growth and what our economy needs.
Well, I don't know how the Indian government's thinking. Obviously, the UK would like to do a deal, and the Indian government might feel that if there is a change of government in the UK, perhaps the deal might be scuppered. That could be one of the reasons. I don't know, but I would do this deal yesterday.
Yes, yes. John Taylor congratulates you on your presentation. Excellent stuff. Very, very interesting. I liked your 3 clear points. That gets things across very, very forcefully. Trade will also be greatly facilitated by law reform in India that will support digitalization. Could I support you in promoting this? Asks John Taylor.
I totally agree with John. India, Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister, has pushed digitalization in India, but there are some big problems. For example, land digitalization, and people are pushing back heavily on that. I mean, the powers that control things at the moment, and they're wrong. Digitalization is right, and it should be done. But for the first time in the last few years, you can get your birth certificates or people's death certificates or marriage certificates, all those things online, which were never the case before.
Well, there are obviously advantages for a country the size of India to go digital. Can I ask how successful that procedure has been? I mean, is all India, does it have proper coverage, and are people sufficiently computer literate to be able to use the system as it stands?
I can't answer the question about literacy in computers, but I know that there are approximately 970 people eligible to vote in India, and voting is going on at the moment, as you know. I think 5 stages are complete, and it's electronic compared to our voting system in the UK. It's paper-based. So as I think the way this works is the election commission seals all the stages, all the boxes from the various stages of electioneering and voting in a secure place. And then on the 4th of June, they connect these electronic boxes or whatever they are into servers, and they get the vote of all candidates within seconds. So from that point of view, India is quite further ahead than the UK, but there are a lot of places that India needs to get further. But good progress in the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I don't want to get too distracted by elections, but as they're going on in both countries at the moment, I think is uppermost in our minds. I love the thought that in India, rather fairly large country, you have 543 seats, and we've got 650 for somewhere which is probably smaller than the average Indian state. What about the actual structure? I was asking you before, you have a bicameral system, you have an upper house as well as a lower house. I think people might be a bit interested to know more about that.
Sure. One point about the 650 seats in the UK. The UK obviously is much more representative of its people, with more MPs than India does. But as far as houses, lower and upper houses are concerned, of course, that's not the case in Westminster. But they're all at the same level. But in India, the Lok Sabha is the People's House, which is the House of Commons, and the Rajya Sabha, which is equivalent to the House of Lords. The Rajya Sabha is the House of Rulers. In the olden days, there must have been Maharajas or Rajas in there, but now they're appointed by governments, like peers, and peers are appointed in the UK by political parties too. So it's a carbon copy almost of the UK.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting, and we look forward to the 4th of June for the I think the day the results are coming out. Now, the questions coming from all over here. Sukratu Anil Bharave asks, the UK-India relationship would be envisaged beyond trade and defence into verticals like infrastructure development. Kindly offer your comments. And I would particularly draw your attention to the Inland Waterways project that might be spearheaded by the upcoming government. Which of the two upcoming governments, I'm not sure, but can you tell us about the Inland Waterways project?
I can't. I don't know much about the Waterways project, but I can say that there'll be a lot. Sorry, there's an echo coming through,
Yes.
but there's a lot that can be done between the two countries on. Was the question on climate?
No, it's taking the relationship beyond trade and defence into verticals, like infrastructure development.
Well, sorry, I lost the chain there. I think India is doing quite a good job in infrastructure. There's the Minister for Infrastructure called Mr. Gadkari, who is building, for example, a highway between Delhi and Mumbai, which is about 2,000 kilometers. I might be wrong. And it's going to finish in the first half of 2025. It used to take 40 hours to drive from Delhi to Mumbai. It will take 11 hours.
Gosh. Yes.
Speed is increasing. I mean, there are so many other highways that are being made, so many bridges, so many other, and some great companies on the Indian Stock Exchange like Larsen and Toubro, who are not only doing projects in India but also in Saudi Arabia and other Middle East countries. I'm sure that they could do a good job in the UK as well. The costs, for example, of the HS2 railway,
Yes.
which we all know about because it's come out in papers all the different times, is prohibitive compared to. I remember the Chinese offering it to be done in one third the time. I'm sure the Indians could do the same. Sorry, not one third the time, one third the cost. And I'm sure Indians do something like that. And we should not be just beholden to our own companies in the UK, but to people to companies that can do a good job for the money.
Yes, well, Mumbai to Delhi is impressive. What about the highway system across India? Reminds me of Rudyard Kipling and the Great Trunk Road. Um,
Yeah.
is the motorway system extensive across India currently?
Yes, it's being built. I know that there are four big highways crossing Uttar Pradesh, which is the most populous state in India. It's got 211 million people, and that, I mean, it is just amazing. But you can see in the stock market, I can see the infrastructure companies really doing well
Mm,
because they're delivering. So I don't know exact um, uh, detail on the road building that you asked.
yes, yes, but it's a challenge in itself, isn't it? It's quite
Mm.
a remarkable thought. Takes me back to the again to imperial times and the survey of India, which I think, given the technology of the period, was quite an achievement. Now, St.
Well,
School comes up with a variety of questions here. We'll have to take them one by one. Is there a possibility of skilled training by UK companies for the rising workforce in India? Or would you need support from outside, or do you have a large enough infrastructure educationally to meet the demand?
I think there's great room for that, and there's so many people there. So no, absolutely, there's a lot of room.
Yes. And do you see a scope for the what he calls the defence manufacturing complex in particular?
I see scope in all manufacturing, but
Mhm.
whatever we've got in the UK would obviously be needed in India. And you can go and set this up in India and own it, and provide, because Mr. Modi wants make in India, and you want to. So if you own the factories in India, it doesn't really matter. You might have local partners, you might not have local partners, depending on what you're trying to manufacture. But to be able to get government contracts, you have a better chance producing it in India than here.
Yes. Is it easier to set up a company in India? Do you know?
No, it's very easy.
Oh, right.
It,
The
it, it,
the next sorry.
it doesn't take long at all.
Right. The next area which is raised is plastic molding tools. Apparently, this is excellent in India in terms of capacity and talent, and suggesting that this could be another area of interest for manufacturers and users on both sides.
Well, a friend of mine makes plastic molding um, equipment, or no, not plastic molds for
Mm.
Mercedes Benz
All
in
right.
India. And he said that I want a trade deal immediately because of the tariffs I have to pay for all my plastic molds when they go
Oh,
to
yeah.
Germany.
Yes. Yes. Yet another opportunity.
Well,
Mark Cook, picking your brains here. A very interesting talk. Sounds a fantastic opportunity with India. Now, where can he find out more about the Romania hydrogen project?
um, one of my companies is doing it, and it's in tandem with my solar project that I mentioned because during the peak of the day, there's solar energy produced that cannot be taken by the grid. So it flows into the hydrogen stuff that we're trying to manufacture, into making hydrogen through PEM technology, electrolysis of water, splitting H2 from O, and that's what the energy will go into. But he can contact me directly, and you know I will brief him.
Yes, interesting. Um, a slightly unfair question, but why did you choose Romania for this particular project? Or did this come from the Romanians?
No, no, no. When I sold ebookers, I went and saw my brother-in-law, who was the Indian ambassador in Romania at the time, and he introduced me to a few people. He left, I think, in 2005. I started investing in Romania in November 2007, six, sorry, because Romania was going to join the EU in January 2007. And so I invested a lot of the funds that I got from ebookers in Romania. And of course, then we had the 2008, 9, 10 financial crisis and everything went to pot. So I'm still there. But things have come back now.
Oh, fascinating. Ranjit Kumar, bring us back to home. Can the City of London play a pivotal role in addressing India's capital deficit by leveraging its position as a global financial hub?
It certainly can. I don't know how I'm sure that there have been negotiations with Indian stock exchanges and also with, with other government bodies. But I don't know where they are, and no one really talks about them. I certainly don't know about them. Love to hear.
Right. Well, I might have a quiet chat with the Lord Mayor about that.
Yeah.
Again, from Ranjit, can the City of London facilitate the development of India's debt capital markets, provide expertise to foster market access, and support the creation of a vibrant ecosystem for financial growth? What about that?
Of course it can, but don't get things wrong. Don't think that they are not aware of various things or they haven't got the knowledge or whatever it is, because the US sends a lot of people to India, so does Japan, so do all the Western economies, so to speak. And they're learning or they're doing a pretty good job. So see what they've got and what your competition is. And it's always good to beat competition if you want the business.
Yes, indeed. Um, Now, Kushba Purai, I don't know if these questions are coming from people in England or coming actually from India. It'd be very interesting to know. India is a great source for UK AI companies to access data. How accessible is it for international companies to access the wealth of digital data that India holds, especially global leading initiatives such as the biometric Aadhaar card? How could UK companies engage? Could you explain perhaps what the Aadhaar card is?
Yes. In fact, I just wrote a book called The Indian Century,
Not
and
another book.
that's another book. And
Splendid.
there's a chapter there on the India stack, which is a technology stack, and it started with the Aadhaar card. It's totally amazing. Of course, the smartphone has helped, but Mr. Modi's there were 56 million bank accounts in 2014 when he came to power. There was 758 million in 2018, and no, sorry, I'm giving you. Not sure, I'm mixed up with Aadhaar and bank accounts, but I think it's bank accounts, and there are over 1 billion now. And that goes with the Aadhaar card because the Aadhaar card is a biometric KYC of for banks or anyone else. And it used to take banks 12 US
Ah,
dollars, 12 US dollars to do a KYC on someone, and the Aadhaar card provides it for 0.0006 cents to the bank. And on this Aadhaar card, you have a payment network called UPI, which and the government owns all of this. So it's a utility. It's a financial utility. It's not like in the States we have Facebook and Google and all these companies which are profit making billions. It's all owned by the people, by the government. And so you can sell anything to anyone through this UPI. You can make shoes at home and go and sell them on this from your computer. You can have a large shop, you can have a large organization, and everyone can use this, which is amazing.
That really is remarkable, isn't it? And in such a short period of time. That's the remarkable
Absolutely.
thing.
And most of the African countries are looking to getting this system, from India.
Yes,
And the Europeans should look at this too.
yes, quite remarkable. Now, Madhu Sharma, I knew the shadow of China would come up sooner or later. Why is there a need for a trade deal with India when China continues to trade and invest in the UK and EU to the detriment of both UK and EU economies, without any trade agreement and without any deterrence?
Okay, a trade agreement just helps trade. As I said in my talk, you reduce duties, customs duties, and trade doubles. So India is sending 23 billion to the UK already, and so is China. China might be sending a lot more, and vice versa. But we're talking about creating jobs in both countries. We need jobs. All of us need jobs, high quality jobs. And a trade deal with India will create 300,000 jobs. With China, I dare say it'll create 500,000. I don't know. But, why not? So trade deals should be done with each other. Um, there is something, balance of payments and other things that I'm not talking about, but I'm talking about creating jobs. So I think if we are in the axis of the West versus China, then why not?
Indeed, Kushba Parai takes us further with the Chinese question. How much of a threat is the Chinese damming rivers and diverting waterways to the Indian agricultural sector? And how is India adapting to these geopolitical pressures as well as the challenge of climate change? Several questions in there.
Well, the river that where I think he's focusing on is the Brahmaputra River,
Oh,
which comes from China and goes into the Bay of Bengal
yeah.
through Assam and Bangladesh. And sure, there is a talk of damming and thus reducing water flow. But climate change is a problem. There's no doubt about it. The problem India has is that it's got 300 to 400 million people who don't have running water or electricity. So you need to, I mean, can you imagine you can't do your homework after 6 o'clock in the evening when the sun goes down?
Yeah.
You first things first, we need to give all 300 or 400 million people electricity so that they can work 24 hours if they want to, or they can work at night and if they want to, and so on and so forth. And so when countries say climate change and why are you not stopping using coal and other things, well, it's very difficult. Solar panels and wind turbines have just come in. Um, there's a company called Adani who is building the largest solar park in India. It can be seen from space, and it is 30 gigawatts. And I mean, that's 30,000 megawatts. I'm building 270 megawatts for 140,000 people. This is 30,000 megawatts. I mean, when these things come online, of course, you need to invest in the grid as well. India will prosper because, as you know, GDP of a country is totally related to the use of energy in the country.
Yes. Further issues with Simini Kyriakou. Thank you for your talk. I'm getting a lot of those messages. Few people would have had India successfully completing moon missions, but it's been one of the most exciting good news stories in recent years. Now, can we expect a dramatic rise in the tech, science, and software industries in India, perhaps even rivaling the Magnificent Seven?
Sure. Talking about the moon mission, to tell you what the cost is, it's about 75 or 80 million dollars, which people spend on movies almost every day. So this successful moon mission done by India should be a way of, I mean, they should sell this technology to the rest of the world to launch their own satellites, if you see what I mean. Because um, once you have your own satellites, you can then control communications. Things are so much better. At the moment, the race is the Americans have the most, and then a few other countries. And bringing this technology down to an affordable level means that everyone can send up, and they have space for each country in where when you send up a satellite, the satellite stays still, but or it revolves around the way the Earth revolves around. I don't know if I've got that right, but I think that all UN countries have a spot up there. So, they can control things better, control the movement of goods, control armies, control whatever.
Stephen Morgan, revolving around the same sort of topics, really, the question of green energy, hydrogen, solar. Now, what about the SMR? We talked about that briefly before we started the talk. You think there's a major opportunity for nuclear energy across India?
Absolutely. I think India needs a few dozen small modular reactors. Absolutely. But of course, the Americans want that business, the French want that business, and the UK wants the business. So that's the problem. Get your skates on. you know. By the way, going back to the last question, I didn't answer it fully. Uh, there is a lot happening on the digital side in India, and for example, I only know some figures. I don't know them all, but the top four companies in India in this space, I think TCS, Data Communication Services, is the largest. Then you have Infosys, Wipro, and there's one more, and I'm forgetting the name now. But each of them, each of them hires over 30,000 graduates or IIT graduates or whatever every year. They train them, and these guys, I think each of those companies, and I'm not sure because exports software services worth about between $8 and $10 billion a year. So it's a giant that's being produced on the technology front in India. Sorry, that was the last question.
Yes, no, but absolutely critical one. Now, Mark Cook, slightly technical question here. I thought the Indian UPI system was loss-making for the partners in the ecosystem. So does this need government funding? Can you give us a bit of background on the Indian UPI system today?
Well, the UPI system was put in. I am not sure as to if he's right or wrong. He must be right if he's done some research on it. I know this that the government just giving access to Aadhaar, which is the biometric system, is amazing. And most things do make a loss before they make a profit. So I'm not sure as to where what the government said and what they've done. And I don't think that the government will not fund it to make it go into administration or something like that. That's not going to happen. So I don't know is the answer.
Right. I'm afraid time is getting on, and John Taylor is asking perhaps the most important question today. How can people contact you, please?
Oh, my first name is Dinesh at my second name, themedia.org, O-R-G.
That's very, very straightforward. I think you can anticipate quite a lot of inquiries
Don't
coming up.
just mail.
Now, we're getting messages here. The forthcoming lectures in the Lord Mayor series. Thursday the 30th of May, empowering diverse and creative thinking for London's future success. Friday the 31st, I'm afraid, is the city resilient against the global terror threat? And on the 6th of June, Fish, Food and Finance, intriguing one this, a journey through London. Finally, first of all, thank you to the audience. I think we've had some very useful questions today, Dinesh. And more than anything else, thank you so much indeed, not only for your very insightful remarks at the beginning, but the extra information you've given us with so many questions that have come at you from all directions. Um, Thank you very much indeed for that. Very grateful. And I'm sure that we will find that this particular lecture will be getting plenty of hits subsequently, because, of course, all of our lectures, including the questions and answers, are available on the Gresham Society website and the YouTube channel, in case you'd like to revisit anything. And of course, we hope to see you again soon for another lecture in the Knowledge Miles series. And please, let's all be aware of the Lord Mayor's theme for the year. And I think this has been a very good contribution today, and that is Connect to Prosper. Dinesh, audience, thank you all very much indeed for today.
Thank you very much indeed.